Look at this map of India. If you zoom in on the eastern border of West Bengal, you'll find a small municipality called Taki. In the 1800s, this was a vibrant center of early Bengali education, home to pioneering government colleges and girls' schools. But by 2011, the legitimate economy in this region had collapsed. There were no heavy industries, no medium-sized enterprises, and agriculture was largely limited to a single crop cycle per year because of a rapidly depleting winter water table. The local population was left with a massive financial vacuum. The local geography made the area nearly impossible to police. The terrain is dominated by the Sundarbans, a sprawling network of dense, impenetrable mangrove forests intersecting with murky tidal rivers. It is a landscape built for evasion. When a local government cannot provide legitimate jobs, a dense, unmapped border region becomes a highly lucrative asset. The natural environment dictated the rise of a black market, laying the groundwork for a systematic criminal takeover. The primary engine of this new economy was cross-border cattle smuggling. Every night, thousands of cows were moved through the rural backyards of Taki and ferried across the Ichamati River into Bangladesh. Moving that many animals in total silence required brutal methods. Smugglers would routinely insert sharp pins into the tongues of the cattle to ensure they couldn't make a single sound during the transit. Human handlers, known locally as rakals, would strap themselves to inflatable bags. Under the cover of darkness, they tethered themselves to the cattle and silently rode the treacherous river currents to the opposite shore. To bypass the Border Security Force patrols, the smugglers developed a precise cross-border signaling system. A specific sequence of flashlight blinks across the river, or the timing of a single firecracker, meant the soldiers had moved on and the route was clear. This animated flowchart shows the core economic transaction. Cattle were pushed eastward across the borderline. In return, untraceable Bangladeshi cash and foreign gold bars flowed westward back into West Bengal. A cow worth 30,000 rupees on one side would fetch 80,000 on the other. This operation transformed the local economy. Laborers who once worked in brickfields were suddenly seen with millions of rupees and illegal firearms, boasting that the local administration and police now belonged to their syndicate. By capturing the police and the administration, they had purchased the very infrastructure designed to stop them. With a steady stream of illicit cash secured, the syndicate began its next phase of expansion, manufacturing legal identities for undocumented individuals crossing the border. They targeted the digital identity infrastructure. Local operators running Aadhaar enrollment centers faced severe political intimidation, pressured into issuing permanent IDs without verifying any background documents or conducting required background checks. This graphic demonstrates the bureaucratic domino effect. A single fraudulent entry in the Aadhaar database provides the primary proof of identity required by other agencies. From there, it satisfies verification requirements for a PAN card, a voter ID, and eventually a passport. The mass manufacturing of identity creates artificial, politically loyal voting blocks that shift local elections and change the district's demographics from the inside.
Bypassing a physical fence is a logistical problem, but exploiting a digital ID system allows a syndicate to legally entrench undocumented populations and effectively seize political power from within the state's own borders. Backed by immense wealth and a synthetic voter base, the syndicate moved to monopolize territory, targeting ancestral real estate through manipulated power of attorney transfers. The tactics were brutally direct. Syndicates would surround local landowners at gunpoint, threatening their families, and force them to sign property deeds and legal instruments they weren't even permitted to read. Even if victims managed to escape and sought legal recourse, the system was rigged against them. When landowners went to the local registry office to check the status of their deeds, compromised officials would falsely claim the records did not exist, completely blocking any legal defense. Phase 3. The COVID-19 lockdowns provided a structural advantage to the syndicate. The pandemic and subsequent stay-at-home orders acted as a shroud, accelerating the land theft. Victims were legally trapped inside, unable to visit government offices, unable to reach police stations. The syndicates finalized property transfers. A global health crisis designed to mandate civilian safety was deliberately exploited to quietly strip generations of families of their wealth and their homes. To see exactly how this operates on the ground, look at the case of Prabir Rai Chaudhuri. He was a local supervisor for an Aadhaar enrollment center in Taki. When he repeatedly refused to process undocumented applications, The syndicate intimidated him and drove him entirely out of his hometown. When he was finally able to return home after the 2024 elections, the destruction was absolute. His 100-year-old ancestral estate had been gutted, and a sacred Shiva lingam had been uprooted and thrown out of his family's temple. But the property hadn't just been abandoned. Local law enforcement was actively using his illegally occupied home as a staging ground and storage facility for Cyclone Amphan relief materials. When the local police use an illegally seized home to store government relief materials, the line between the state and the syndicate disappears. The administration itself becomes the infrastructure of the crime. Recent electoral changes have signaled a shift in the local political landscape. A new resistance is now actively pushing back against the shadow government. They are proposing new legislative countermeasures, including specific anti-land extortion bills, closing loopholes in foreign funding regulations, and issuing directives for the Border Security Force to immediately send intercepted infiltrators to detention camps rather than through local courts. Reclaiming the state involves untangling over a decade of legally codified fraud. Winning an election as the start, but the deeper challenge is removing the fraudulent entries from the state's own land registries and databases. A nation's borders are physical lines on a map, but they are enforced by the integrity of its internal systems, its identity databases, its land registries, and its local police. Once those institutions are corrupted, reclaiming a state becomes a battle to rebuild the very foundation of the law.